I have lots of inks and mists, but I always use them in the same way, stamping, inking my edges, and adding droplets of mist on my embellishments. I feel stuck in a rut using those same techniques, and I would love to be more creative with those supplies. Glitter Girl, can you help?
Of course I can. Today I'm going to share this ink technique first and then use it on my layout for two reasons. One, so that I can go ahead and finish the ink technique and let it dry while I assemble the layout. And two, if you're only interested in the technique, you can watch that part and then skip the layout. Likewise, if you're not interested in techniques and you want to see just the layout, you can skip ahead and see just the layout come together without worrying about the stamping. Okay, so the technique that I'm going to use involves distress ink and water. If you're not familiar with distress inks, they are dye inks, but they are water reactive. They're not the best for just normal stamping, because if you stamp with just distress ink on a stamp, especially a clear stamp, it's not going to be the clearest image because it's not meant to be a really crisp, clear image. The distress is there for all sorts of different techniques. I use it a lot for my edges because it's a really soft ink for the edge, but yet it dries instantly. Some inks are soft, but they take a long time to dry, and that makes for a mess if you want to keep scrapbooking rather than stop and let everything dry before you adhere anything. So for this technique, I have some plain smooth white cardstock. This is Nina solid white cardstock, but you can use any smooth white cardstock, and you can try it on textures. It will just vary from texture to texture as to how it comes out and whether you like the look. But smooth is going to give you the most consistent look. I've cut these to 3x4. I tend to, when I have smooth white cardstock and it ends up in my scrap bin, then whatever is left I cut to 3x4 because it's a size that I know I will use, and it's also a size that's good for stamping if I'm going to stamp something for a card and cut it out, or an embellishment and cut it out. I'm not going to end up wasting too much by stamping on a 3x4. I think in this instance I'm going to keep them 3x4 in the layout, so that works well. I also need a journaling stamp. Now I've got this great big one that's bigger than my 3x4 card, but you could use any stamp that has lines or journaling, and of course you can use the technique for a different look, but I want to make journaling cards, so I need journaling lines. I'm probably not going to need my clear block, but I just tend to get it out with everything else. And then I'm going to need distress ink. It could be any color, but I'm going to use Mermaid Lagoon. What's important for this technique is that you want one that has lots of ink in the ink pad. You don't want your old dried out ink pad that you've used to its last inch, and then it's perfect for the edges of things because it won't smudge. It won't smudge where you don't want it to go, but it wouldn't be great for this because you'll be pressing forever to try and get the ink to transfer to the paper. And then you need some water. I'm going to use a spray bottle, and that's a mini mister, which is just, because they're really small, they sit in my drawer really nicely, but I've used other spray bottles and they don't have to be from stamping companies. If you can spray water, that's fine. You can also do it by running your stamp under the tap or just sprinkling it on with your hands, but the spray bottle makes it a little less messy. I'm going to put some just scratch paper down on my desk because this first step of inking is going to end up with some ink all over the place, so let's just make that easier. Okay, easy, easy, easy. Step one, I want to get the front side, the side I'm going to use. I want the front side of the white cardstock to be completely covered in the distress ink. Now, of course, you can do that with an ink applicator, but that's going to give you this really soft color, and it's going to take you a lot of effort. If you have a nice juicy ink pad, it'll be done in just a few seconds, just like that. Okay, so okay, so the distress ink is going to sink into that cardstock, and just seeing if there's any places that are lighter where I didn't press quite as hard. And when it has all soaked into that cardstock nicely, then I'm ready for the next step in this really easy technique. So instead of using my journaling stamp with ink and then stamping that onto paper. I'm using the water reactive property of the Distress ink with water on the stamp. So I'm just going to cover my stamp in water, and I've just got a few little droplets there. So you'll be able to see how it changes the ink. And I purposely did that because I wanted one that would get that little bit of off-cast spray, and then one that wouldn't because it's further away. So you'll be able to compare them and see which you like better, the one that has extra texture from having the off spray, or the one that's a bit more true. Okay, so my stamp is wet, and stamping that onto the paper. And then pick it up, and it will change the color of the ink. Now the paper is curled. That's because there's so much liquid in the paper right now. And you will see the end result will be that the lines from the stamp, they just lighten the color of the Distress ink. One more. You can let it dry and just air dry, or you can dry it with heat gun. And then when it's all dry, it's ready to use on your layout. Of course, you can go to town using that idea with any sort of technique you want, with any stamp, with any color of Distress ink, and with any sort of end project. But I just wanted to use it for journaling cards so that I have nice, subtle lines to write on. I'm going to let them dry, and now I'm going to move on to my layout and put it all together. Okay, today for this page I'm going to be using these two small photographs. I just thought I would show you what it looks like before I crop them down, because this particular set I printed on a selfie printer, and we've had a little bit of discussion in the comments lately about different printing options, and so I thought this week I would print them on the selfie so that you can see what the quality is. The whole image is close to, but not quite, 4 by 6 inches, not including these little tear off pieces. But this is the option to print with a border, and I've printed it straight from my phone. But what I've done to create the collage is to do that in a separate app, and that's also been a question that's come up recently, so I thought I would very quickly show you how I do that. And I do it with the Project Life app. And in the Project Life app, instead of going to the full page option, I'm going to this option that has the little collage. Now it will default to 2 3x4s on a 4x6, which is what this is, but you can choose different options here. Okay, and it tells you the size underneath. Okay, so I'm doing this. Then I choose, you can put a journaling card there from your Project Life library, or you can choose a photo. So I go to my photo stream and I choose the picture I want, and it puts it there. Then I pick the other one, and if I want to just go ahead and add another one of those, then I'm done. Then if I want to move anything around, I can move it just like that. I can edit the brightness, the contrast, or the saturation. I can turn it, yeah, and you just tap into the background when you want to move around. If I wanted to move this one, I can come back and do that. I can make it big, I can make it small, whatever. Okay, so that's how I would do that, to put 2 onto one picture. Then to save it, and you go to export, and then you can choose where you're going to save it. Because I print from my phone, I can either go straight to print, or I can save the image. And with my selfie, I save the image. That puts it in my camera roll, and then I go to my selfie printing app, and I pull it up out of my camera roll, and I print it. Super, super easy. Okay, so I hope that is helpful. Just wanted to share that with you. If none of the the options in that little set of different photo collages looks right, or if you want to use a different app, you can search. There are lots and lots of different apps in the App Store for all different kinds of phones that let you put different photos into squares or rectangles or anything, and then you just run that through as a 4x6. And in this case, it's a 4x6 with a border, which makes it a little bit smaller. So I'm going to cut these images down now and create my page. I'm using a background from Pebbles Basics line, which is an older collection but still relevant, so you might still find it around, or any other basic pattern for a background. So I wanted a gray chevron to go with the tones that are in the photo, and then I'm going to put lots of blue and globes and a few flowers on this page about reading. My design ideas for this particular page all started with this die cut in response to the photos. So I had the photos in mind, and then when I started looking through supplies, I wanted to match this Let's Go on an Adventure globe. It's from the Starshine die cut pack, with this idea of learning to read and being interested in books and things like that. Okay, so then I've got my journaling cards in that blue tone that's going to be nice and bright, but still have that subtle pattern. And then I'm going to pick up on the red and maybe even repeat that floral. So I have the globe pattern paper and the floral pattern paper in the smaller scale because I've taken them from the 6x6 paper pad. And then I wanted something to contrast that didn't have a big pattern, so I've gone with a yellow polka dot. And I pulled out two other die cuts from that same die cut pack. This one that's like the checkout card that you get in a library book, or at least you used to in the non-digital world when we used to have to stamp and write our names in there. And this one just as a nice complement to the idea. I'm going to need other stuff, obviously, but I think that's a good start. I think I'm going to go ahead and keep the photos together, and I like them in this top quadrant of the page. So I'm going to end up with photos and some embellishment up here, and then journaling and some other embellishment down here at the bottom. I think the best thing for me to do would be to stick the yellow directly behind the pictures. So the big images, like the flowers and the globes, are not competing with the faces and all the other details in the photograph. So that's going to go here. And then this is going to play into this piece. I think the floral and then the globes, with more of the globes showing than the floral. So this is going to be a smaller piece. So just I was just looking because the colors are not even all the way around, and I want a little bit more of the red because the red is the version that's on the die cut. So I want that piece basically. Cut another rectangle here. And just take off this little perfed edge too there. Oops. And then globes. And really, I think I want almost all of this, but I want to save a little strip so that I can bring that globe pattern down to the bottom as well. So I'll just take off enough that I can see in the small pattern that they are globes. And everything else can stay in this bigger piece at the top. So I've got those three for the top, and then when I come back to my trimmer, that means I have these three for the bottom, which means I'm going to have more of the yellow at the bottom. And I have two of these, and you can see side by side now, this is the clean one that doesn't have the overspray. This is the more distressed one where there's quite a lot of overspray here and a few bigger droplets. So you can see, hopefully, which you would prefer. I do think this one needs to go this direction. And I think I'm going to use this one for the writing and this one for some embellishment and maybe just a little bit of writing like the date. And then these two are going to come down here. And it may be that I swap this one to come down here, but I think I like this one with the pictures. So that's enough to get started. I'll go ahead and start sticking some stuff to the page. I want this design to go right to the top edge on both, the edge of the paper on both the top and the bottom. And then I'm going to end up with empty space in the middle. It's a little bit similar to the pages that the page I did with the edges, where I went from side to side and had some empty space in the middle. I'm not sure if I'll end up with more empty space here or less, so we will see when it's all done. So I'm just doing those layers there and then the photo. Bringing the photo over here does a few things. What I wanted to do was, if I look at just this little part of the composition rather than the whole page, if I roughly divide this into thirds, his face is on the 2 lines of thirds. And that makes your eye go more to him than to Granddad in the photo. Not that Granddad's not important, but of course I want the focus on Wonder Boy. So I purposely wanted him to be on those third lines if I'm just looking at this part of the composition. Yeah, and then having the yellow over here gives me a bit more room for that globe. Want to get this into the mix as well so that it will coordinate at the bottom when there's more of it on display with the writing. So I think I want a little bit of it to show so that I can do the writing here. I'm just looking for where I want it to go, just in case I like it better somewhere else, but I think that's where I'm going to go with it. Yeah, over here. That's going to go up there somewhere. Okay, and then I can come down to this bottom part of the page. And put this set of layers together. That one I want way more available so that I can use the lines for my writing. And the florals, the dots, the florals, and the globes. Go ahead and add this die cut so that it's going to bridge the gap between the patterns and the stamped piece. But I'll leave this one off for the moment because those two are going to need some dimension and a bit more figuring out what's going to go with them. Before I do anything else, I'm going to go ahead and put my journaling on this card. I'm going to use my white pen, and I use the white Jelly Roll from Sakura. It's just the standard medium Jelly Roll pen. I've been using these since I was a teenager and used to buy them at a fancy stationery shop. Now I get them anywhere that sells Japanese stationery, so I often find them in Chinatown, but you can find them either online or in shops that have lots of different pens to try, basically, because Sakura is a big Japanese pen company, so although it's easy to find them in a Japanese specialist stationery store, they are definitely stocked in places that don't just cater to Japanese stationery and have lots of other things. I really like them and I've used them for a long time. They're just really simple and work well. Do be careful though that the other Sakura Jelly Roll pens that have special effects like the souffle and the glaze, they look almost exactly alike. You want just the plain Jelly Roll for journaling. And now it's time for fun embellishment. So I have basically the important stuff on the page. I might use letter stickers and add a bigger title, but I thought from here I can carry on. So just looking at the colors and whether I wanted to use the pink with the ampersands or maybe the red. I think the red actually would work quite well. So this is these are washi tape stickers designed by Kelly Perky that are from Studio Calico. And I think that one there and this one up above the photo. And then I've got some other random things that I've pulled out. There was something on here that I remember thinking might work. Oh, it was this together. But that might not be, I think maybe not. Okay, those are Evilicious. They're some stickers that I keep meaning to use and I haven't. Oh, I've used one. I need to go use more. And I thought maybe the blue stars. Now these are the 6x12 stickers from Starshine, and they're clear, but they're not washi. But I think they might still work together with the washi. Don't think they'll tear. Nope, I need my scissors. So, some blue stars down here, and again some up the top. But where? Maybe this side here. Maybe this is going to go right down at the bottom. Okay, this is going to go over here, I know that much. And I feel like, oh, I was going to say I need a globe at the bottom. I do have these globes, but it might be nice to have some other globe element. Ha ha ha. Like a tiny little flare badge. So I'm just going to cut this with the clear backing so that I can move it around before I take it off the backing and it sticks to everything. And speaking of sticking to everything, these are the acrylic shapes from Starshine. And obviously they're clear, so the big worry would be about adhesive, but they are just peel and stick. The adhesive is already there, so you don't have to worry about anything. You can change the color if you want to add ink to the top, but I quite like them just clear. So I think I might bring more stars in and use those 3 stars, but I'm not sure where yet. And I pulled out these Daily Flash October afternoon stickers because it had these 2 with the reading, but I don't think it actually works now, although I do have this globe with books and that might work. So yeah, I think just that one. Okay, let's see if we can get this to work down here at the bottom of the page. Where can this fit? I'm looking, okay, so I was looking here, it would have to go all the way down to the bottom, it would still cover up a little bit of the writing. If I move it in about there, which is a nicer balance in terms of all the paper, it's covering up the writing. So that's why I moved over to this side, but I don't particularly like this trapped space here because I wish I could do something like this, which I would have had to do before I did the writing. So I'm not sure if that shape is going to work. Because if I had put it down earlier, that's a great shape to write around, and it would look like it really fit because the writing would go all the way around it. But I didn't, and that makes it more difficult. And if I put it out like this, then it is too far. Okay, maybe not this globe. As cute as it is. The things I pulled out, I wasn't really happy with the shapes and sizes of things, so I've pulled out 2 things that I know tend to help me when I'm stuck that way. So a big circle punch, and just circles in general are great for for spaces that are being awkward. And this one is pretty close to the size of this globe. So that's why I pulled that out. And then also my trusty label punch that gives me those options of something that's just a little bit fancier than a rectangle, but still works with that much ease. So 2 circles. This is just a scrap that I had from an earlier project. And this could fit here and give me a little home to start adding some more things. I don't want to cover up the entirety of that red flower. But this now bridges the gap from the bottom to the top there. I do like this piece running into the text on the washi and the stars. So I have this little corner that's created, and I can place it so that the W rests on top of that. And I've got my little circle there. I'm going to put 2 of the clear stars up there and 1 of them down here. So I think maybe that clear star here. And then I need something there in the middle. And I have that big cut apart sheet in a small format in here, in the 6x6. So I think maybe a couple little pieces with text or arrows or things like that might work well. And maybe a bit of vellum. So this is that Christmas vellum, and I'm just going to put adhesive on that bottom edge and tuck it underneath. And it's actually not smaller, I used the same punch, and I'm just going to layer it with a little bit of an offset there. And I'll use this other one with this grouping up here. And that together piece, which might need to go up there. Now that I look at it, I think I need a smaller one for here. And here's a nice tiny one that just says go. Okay, then up to the top here. So, big green circle. Oops. I'm moving this because I just accidentally lined it up exactly with that yellow, and I'd rather have it inside or outside that line. So move it over a little bit. And then the vellum. I think the globe's going to come down here a little bit. And then I have 2 clear stars. I have that little together piece. And I want to bring in some mist so that we have both some ink and some mist on this page. This one's going to go about there. That one across the vellum. And stars, what about big star on this side? And little star this side. And to make this stamping look coherent with the other, I'm just going to put the date here. got a little bit too much space there, so maybe one of these works up here. Don't want to cover up all of that star, so is that too much stuff? I'm not sure about the balance there. This looks a little detached, so maybe the tiny flare is not the best thing. Let's see, what about like a chipboard, small chipboard piece? Do that little one, or the So Happy is too big. But I could bring this star and then I have like this tiny little triangle of stars. Okay, we're ready for some mist, I think. So since I went with that gold vellum, I'll go with the gold mist. And let's see. What I wanted to do was have it be a little less random. So I wanted to choose a spot and have where is it going to be? I'm going to go out from the text here. I'm going to see if I can do it with just the tube, and if not, then, oh, yeah, that'll work. If not, I was going to get a really small paintbrush. So I'm just going to do a little row of dots. I like this idea in my mind. I'm not sure if I like it on the paper. Yeah, I think it's too... No, I'm not loving it. So I am going to go back to old standard here and splash it around. Okay, and then I also wanted to grab a stencil for a little last touch. Okay, so this is a stencil from, I think it was in True Stories. And I'm just going to, in theory, use a colored pencil to go over just a few of them. And I'm doing them as if I had done them before I put all the layers on top, so maybe that would have been easier, but it's okay. I think I wanted them to come down a little further on the right hand side here, so that this has a little bit of an angular motion to it. So I'll do a few more down here than on the other side. And of course you can use stencils like this with all sorts of mediums. So you could use that with ink or mist or anything like that. So they're quite wonky and wobbly, but that's kind of the effect that I wanted to get. And then I'm going to do just a few around the journaling here. And what I'm going to do is layer them with tiny little heart-shaped stickers. They're just there on the left, and they are from Studio Calico. They're just very small, very simple little hearts. Enough? Yeah. So, then which shade shall I go for? I think I'm going to go for this aqua one. And just bring a little heart sticker to each of those little colored pencil hearts. I've linked below to another layout by Kirsty Smith that uses the heart stencil and just a plain pencil in case you might want to check out another look with that same general idea. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you very soon. I'd love for you to stop by our Facebook chat group called Scrapbook Like a Superhero. That's also linked below. Happy scrapping!